Hi guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit more. We're going back into talking about vintage and modern era video games, and I do want to apologize to some of my regular viewers. The other videos are coming, okay? I'm going to talk about other things other than video games. It just seems to be that I keep getting pulled in this direction, and I do have some content planned to talk about video games as well as other topics, like continuing my discussion on reality-based television shows, specifically Toy Hunter and its effect on the vintage toy market, as well as talking more about antiques and collectibles as a valid asset class. And there's going to be some more videos coming that talk about investments, comparing Wall Street or financial investments to the antiques and collectibles genre overall. And of course, we're going to go back and talk about Lego. That said, for the time being, I do want to focus a little bit on what's happening in the vintage video game space as well as the modern era space. So this particular topic is going to be on modern era video games. I'm going to be talking about Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and all the wonderful systems that are going to be coming out in the next year or two, meaning the Nintendo Switch Lite. Possibly we're going to eventually get a PlayStation 5, and who knows what Xbox and Microsoft are going to call their next console. I know there's a code name for it already. That said, I was very surprised that they are releasing a disc-less. I'm being careful how I say that, as you can imagine what else comes to mind when somebody says disc-less very fast on camera. That said, I was surprised that they're doing a media-less based Xbox One system so soon. I did expect Microsoft to be the first to try to go digital only into the next generation. I knew that Sony wouldn't, because Sony got their proverbial butt kicked when they tried to do that with the PSP Go system that came back a few years past. And Nintendo is one of those companies that's still riding the line right between digital media and, of course, physical releases. I know that there are people at Nintendo that really want to push into the digital realm, but a lot of retailers and as such are still demanding, of course, physical copies of games. So Nintendo hasn't been too quick to adopt to the digital frontier yet. I think it's going to be, though, Microsoft is really going to push hardcore into that realm over the next couple of years. That said, what I want to talk about today is what's happening in regards to speculation on the newer systems, meaning people are going out and they're buying, 10 or 20 of the latest limited run video game releases, and also they're going to the store and they're trying to get, 10 copies of the latest collector's edition or special edition or limited edition of the latest video game, whether it be Link's Awakening, which is now coming out for the Switch, I think this month, because this video is being filmed in September of 2019, or whether it be they're just doing something stupid and they're going out and when Amazon has a sale, they're ordering 10 copies of Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch, thinking that in 10 to 20 years or even maybe 5 years from now, they're going to be worth, $60 to $80 or $80 to $100. And they're going to double their money in that particular time frame, which is a bad investment, okay? I'm not going to take the time in this video to compare modern era factory seal video games with returns of Wall Street or other financial investments. That said, guys, I want to take you back. We're going to go into the DeLorean, and we're going to go back to the 1980s. What happened in the 1980s in comic books specifically, okay? In 1989, the Batman movie came out that starred Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, and Kim Basinger. It was considered a groundbreaking film for that time because nothing like that, unless if you go back to the 70s and you look at the original and sequel of Superman, has been done before. So what happened when Batman came out back in the 1980s was a lot of speculators came into the market and they said, wow, this Batman movie is starting to push up some of the prices of the vintage comic books. Well, as a result, maybe modern era comic books aren't that bad of an investment. Well, we all know how this turned out, guys. Okay? And for those of you that do collect vintage comic books, especially of the Copper Age, which is the 1980s and possibly the early 1990s, depending on how far we put the goalpost out to define the Copper Age of comic book collecting, you're going to remember that the market has been kind to only a handful of comic books that came out during the 80s and 90s. Now you're going to have speculators that if this video would get more than 10 or 20 or 30 views due to the law of large numbers, well, Sean, I did well speculating on Amazing Spider-Man 300. Yes, okay, that's an anomaly. Not too many people put away, 10, 20, 30 copies of Amazing Spider-Man 300. They were buying a lot of the hollow foils, the X-Men 1, the Batman relaunch, all of these other comic books that were coming out en masse, and they were spending hundreds to thousands of dollars on these books that became worthless as time went on. Nobody wanted them. Why, guys? Why is that? Because people saw what was happening in the realm of vintage comic books and thought that they could apply it to the modern era comic books of that day and age. And people are still doing this today. You can go to any comic book store you want in the country, and there's people that are trying to speculate on the latest Batman or the latest Amazing Spider-Man or the latest whatever issue out there. That's what's happening in the modern era realm of video games. People are going out and they're sitting there and they're going, limited run only made a several thousand copies of this game. I'm going to go out, I'm going to try to get 10 of them. And I bet you when time goes on and when the Nintendo Switch is no longer in production, I can flip these for 2 or 3 times the price in the market. Well, here's the problem, guys. Number one, everybody's doing that. Nobody's going to care about your factory sealed copy of Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove for the Nintendo Switch that in your mind you equate to stadium events because you can't register how much the market has changed from the 1980s to 2019 today. Number two, anybody can go on a Nintendo Switch, an Xbox One, and a PlayStation 4 and download Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove for a lot less than what the retail version goes for. Now I know what you're going to come back with. Well, Sean, eventually those servers are going to get shut down. Obviously, the Nintendo Switch is going to have a sequel or some kind of follow-up system that Nintendo is going to produce, and it's going to have a whole different online platform. Same thing's going to happen with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One. Well, here's where you're not thinking through properly if you are one of those people that think in this manner. What's going to happen is companies are just going to go back, recode a game like Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove, and it's going to become available for the PlayStation 5, for the Xbox whatever, and the Nintendo Switch or whatever the next Nintendo console is called. We are out of the 1980s and 90s, guys. Okay? Even if a game comes out, whether it's a complete released, full retail physical release, or it's something from Limited Run, Play Asia, Strictly Limited Games, any of those companies, if something comes out into the market, and let's say it only does have a actual print run of 500 copies or less, and it becomes worth a couple $100. First of all, that is a very extreme oddity on the market for that to occur. And second of all, that doesn't mean it's going to become the next stadium events. You cannot go back to the 80s and replicate what happened to stadium events today in 2019. There were no digital downloads back in the 1980s. Back in the 1980s, there was one king of the proverbial video game marketplace, and that was the Nintendo NES Entertainment System. Okay? You cannot compare what happened with that game today. Even people who made money, myself included, speculating on factory sealed Nintendo 64, PlayStation, even PlayStation 2 games. Okay? There's very few sought after factory sealed games that are being made for the PlayStation 3. Even the original Xbox, there's not that many. There are some that are coming up in price because a lot of people didn't go after factory sealed Xbox games the way that they hoarded GameCube games and PlayStation 2 games from that era. That said, the Xbox 360, a lot of people pursued factory sealed games for that system. I know collectors, much like collectors who have factory sealed Wii games, 2DS games, 3DS games out the wazoo, they have substantial supplies of a lot of the more popular factory sealed Xbox 360 games and PlayStation 3 games. I made money, I'll tell you one in particular. I went to, I think it was Target or Walmart, and they had Killzone Trilogy for the PlayStation 3 factory sealed for like $4.99. Well, I bought like 20 copies of it. I think I've been selling them on eBay. It's been a while since I sold one. I think I have like 10 left. I think I've been getting 40 bucks for them shipped. So yeah, over any set number of time, you can take a game like that and make money. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it, though, with all games. For instance, if you have a copy of Killzone, what is it, 3 for the PlayStation 3? Because of the release of Killzone Trilogy, it's not collectible. You would have lost money. It's just like a lot of the people were going out buying Uncharted, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and they were keeping them all factory sealed. Well, guess what? Sony released the Uncharted collection for the PlayStation 4, and demand for those 3 factory sealed originals is very low. Same thing's true for BioShock. I know a lot of guys back in the day thought BioShock was going to be the next big thing. There's going to be a Hollywood movie, a book, a comic book. So they were going out and they were buying factory sealed copies of BioShock, BioShock 2, BioShock Infinite. Well, lo and behold, what happened? The BioShock collection premiered for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. If you're wondering, guys, why I keep looking over that direction every time I say Xbox One or PlayStation 4, it's because if I would turn the camera around, that's where I have my Xbox One and my PlayStation 4 hooked up. Just food for thought. That said, a lot of these items that a lot of people are speculating on, thousands, if not millions of other people are doing the same exact thing. Same thing's happening with the Nintendo Switch right now. There's a lot of people, and I'm seeing some pretty hilarious things on message boards. You know, there's people going after some of the Play Asia exclusives, thinking that because video games from the 1980s and 90s that were import only, like Mega Man, the Willy Wars, items of that nature became really valuable today, they think that the factory sealed copies that Play Asia is selling of some of the shooter collections for the Nintendo Wii and other such games are going to be valuable. I'm sorry, guys, that's not going to happen. Most of those games, for one, are available for direct download from the Nintendo Switch store. And number two, nobody cares about import games today like they did back in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s when the Japanese marketplace got most of those games firsthand before American audiences. And because the market was so Japanese-centric, people like us over in the US and even in Europe had to hope and pray that those games sold well, and companies translated those games for American audiences. You know, one of the things I'm laughing at right now is Collection of Mana. Collection of Mana has a so-called limited physical release that's being released by Square Enix and is sold also on Amazon that a lot of speculators are clamoring for. And I kind of look at this in one of two ways. Yes, some of those people possibly can make money on that game in the short or long term. That said, when you factor in opportunity costs compared to other possible investments, even in the greater antiques and collectibles trade, am I buying any copies of Collection of Mana? No, I don't think it's a worthwhile investment because everybody's going to be scooping them up thinking that, well, 5 years from now, if somebody didn't get a Switch back in 2019 or 2020, they're going to want a copy of that game and it's going to be out of print so I can sell it to them at a premium. That's flawed thinking. Let me explain why. They can easily download the game. It's just like what's happening with limited run games, and I did a video on this. The people that are going out and they're pre-ordering like 30 copies of Night Trap for the Nintendo Switch made by Limited Run. Here's the problem with that, guys. First of all, Night Trap, the original printing, was way back in 1992, 93 for the Sega CD. The one for the Nintendo Switch isn't even the first printing. Number two, you can download the game on your Nintendo Switch, your PlayStation 4, your Xbox One. This is just a fancy item that if you have to have the physical copy, go ahead and buy it. I did a whole video. I love Limited Run. Don't make any mistake. I love the products they produce. That said, if you are speculating in these, thinking they're going to become worth money in the future. And here's a PlayStation 4 copy of a limited run game. This is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Okay? You are dead wrong. These items will live in infamy on digital servers, and even if a PlayStation 5 or the next generation Xbox comes out, you better believe if these guys sold well digitally, they're going to be offered again, okay? There's going to come a time when complete back catalogs of games from Nintendo, from Sony, from Microsoft, from whatever, are going to be available 24/7 all the time going forward online. And if you don't believe me, it's already starting to happen. Whether you have a Wii U, a 3DS, or a Nintendo Switch, you can still download classic Nintendo games. In fact, guys, I've said this before. I'm going to do another video because I don't want to sway too much on this topic. But there's different markets opening up in the vintage video game realm. And the market that's on fire right now is the most speculative of all. That's for graded, factory sealed, or complete in box WATA games from the coveted Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis era. That said, if you're going to collect just regular Nintendo cartridges to put in a shelf and you think you're investing in them, no one's going to want them going forward. And if you don't believe me, look what happened with the Atari. Back in 1999, everybody was arguing with me, telling me that 20 years out, Atari, ColecoVision, Intellivision, Commodore, this stuff was going to skyrocket in value. It was going to be the next big collecting bubble. And I would sit there and laugh at them. I made a ton of money in that market, and I was very honest with them. I said, you want to give me $250 for a Chase the Chuck Wagon with manual, or $150 for a Crazy Climber, cartridge only? I'll take your money. But this stuff is not going to be any more valuable into the future than what it is now. And this was back in between 1995 and 2005. I did a video on it. I had people, no, Sean, you're dead wrong. This is the golden age of video gaming. Everyone's going to covet this going forward. Well, what happened? How many of you are collecting Atari games right now? Seriously. How many of you are really going out looking for the rarest of the rare and be willing to pay, $500, $1,000, $10,000 for an Atari game and then think you're going to sell it for more 5, 10, 20 years out? It's not going to happen, guys. The market's dead. People who are playing Atari right now, they're doing it on either a newer console through emulation or through some of the compilation packs that they have out, like Atari Flashback. Atari Anthology is a very good one for the PlayStation 2. Or they're going out and they're buying an Atari Flashback console, and they're just enjoying some of the games of their youth. That's all that they want. Most people don't want a full bookshelf like this, full with cartridge-only Atari 2600 games. If you do, that's great if you have a passion for it. I'm not going to knock you. That said, if you're calling it an investment, you're dead wrong. It's just like right now what's happening with Amiibo. Some of the Amiibos that came out, they're already leveling off their peaks, guys. They're not going to go any higher. This idea that 30 years from now, an original first print Amiibo is going to sell for $1,000 or $2,000 and rank up there with 12-back Star Wars figures is a freaking pipe dream. Too many were made, too many were hoarded, factory sealed. I myself have cases of this stuff still. I bought some of mine through closeouts. I got this. Let me show you. The reason why I have this graded, I've said this in other videos. I had cases of this stuff, okay? This stuff is not as uncommon or quote-unquote rare, which you guys know how I feel about that word, as you think it is. Be very careful if you're going after stuff like this. Even if you want this item from me, which is a VGA 95 Plus Gold Mario first print, okay? This is a very speculative item. I would not be buying it. I'm happy to sell it. I'm happy to sell everything you see on this table and pretty much everything behind me as well. That said, I would not be buying a lot of this stuff for investment, okay? The market just isn't there, and it's not going to be there in the future like some of you guys think it is. Going back to vintage video games, there's two markets emerging. There's the hardcore speculative so-called investment realm where people are taking like $5,000, $10,000 and they're going after a factory sealed Kid Icarus cartridge that's WATA graded from 1988 or Metroid or Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or Zelda. And then there's the people that just want to own and play the games. There's nothing wrong with that if you want to build up a cartridge-only collection. Just understand, Nintendo prices hit their peak in 2015 for most loose cartridge-based items. I don't care if we're talking about a Snow Brothers, a Dragon Warrior 4, a Legend of Zelda Gold, a Metroid, whatever cartridge you want to look up. 2015 was the peak. There's more people selling into the market right now than there are people coming into that particular marketplace. And one reason why, digital downloads. Another reason, right here, your NES Classic Edition. 60 bucks, 30 hit games, $2 a game. You can literally buy 2 of these for $120, keep one factory sealed and one to play, and you never have to worry about if the system fails, you already have one factory sealed, and you spent $120 for 30 of the best games that came out for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Same thing is true for the Super NES Classic. Get yourself 2 of them. Play one, keep one factory sealed, okay? That way, if this would ever break, you have a spare. There's no point, I've said this before, in going out and buying a freaking loose cartridge of Earthbound or Super Metroid ever since this came out. It's going to kill the market over time for that particular item, guys, okay? The people that are coveting a loose cartridge-based item of Earthbound or Super Metroid are pretty much speculators or some hardcore enthusiasts, but the casual gamer is like, well, dude, let me just get a Super NES Classic and be done with it. I'd rather pay a premium for this and get, what? How many games are on this? Is it 22 games, I think, on this? And get all these games, then have to sit there and look up, what's the Zelda 3 going for? What's the Super Castlevania 4 going for? And sit there and bid on the open market. It's ridiculous, because you know 5 to 10 years down the line, no one's going to care about the cartridges anymore, okay? The market is going in the direction where it's either going to be digital downloads, it's going to be systems like this, plug-and-play gimmicks, or it's going to be the speculative, higher-end, graded games. That's where the market's going. Somebody asked in the comments what I think about rare, quote-unquote, Nintendo games and where prices are going to be 5 to 10 years out. My answer to that is, it depends. If it's something like a complete mint inbox Little Samson, and the person gets it WATA graded and it comes back a 9.2, 9.4 overall, prices could possibly go up for a little bit on a type of item like that. That said, if you have an average copy of Little Samson, complete in box or cartridge only, I expect prices to drop. A hardcore collector and or speculator who's trying to invest in the WATA games is not going to want a mediocre graded game. Even if it is like a Little Samson or a Flintstones, what is it, one of the rare Flintstones games or what have you. They're going to want something of a higher caliber grade. Now, when you start talking stadium events or something like Nintendo World Championships, even in average mediocre condition, if they're graded by like WATA Games and they're cartridge only, which of course Nintendo World Championships would have to be, there's no box or manual made for that, as we all know. That said, those type of items may continue to be coveted because they're part of the collector's mindset of being rare, really rare. And to be fair, in regards to Nintendo World Championships, whether we're talking about a gray cartridge or a gold cartridge, yeah, you can make that assumption that they are coveted, they're holy grail type items, and they are somewhat rare. The gold obviously more than the gray. That said, if we're talking about a copy of stadium events, I'm sorry guys, it's not rare. Some of you guys hate me every time I say that, but it's the truth. It was a mass-produced item. The difference is, after several thousand copies got out, they shut production off due to licensing. That doesn't make it rare. It's uncommon compared to other Nintendo releases, but it is not rare. It just got how do I want to say this? It just got the vote of elusivity because hardcore collectors wanted to covet that game for what it stands for in the Nintendo collecting realm. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't see it as a good investment. I would not be tying my money up in stadium events. Nintendo World Championships, that's another market entirely. I do see prices on stuff of that nature still going up. Given how many are out there and how many people want them, yes, that's the equivalent of your alpha or beta Black Lotus for those of you guys that collect Magic the Gathering, which I will do a video on. That said, that is something that still has legs to it, okay? I'm just saying be very cautious if you're going to speculate on graded, factory sealed or complete in box Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis games. Or if you're going to do something stupid and go out and fill a whole bookshelf full of loose Nintendo games that you consider to be a good investment. Because, as I've stated before, and price charting will prove this for you, the prices have been falling on a lot of the loose games because more people are selling their collections than they are buying, because back in 2012, 2013, 2014, a lot of people thought that for some reason the Nintendo collecting realm or the Nintendo video game marketplace was undervalued. So a lot of people started coming into the market en masse, and they built up all these collections of games, tied up thousands of dollars in them, and now they realize on the secondary market the items aren't going up in value because they're cartridge only. And the person that collects cartridge only is of a different mentality than someone collects near mint boxed games or factory sealed graded games. Okay? So that market really didn't materialize, and I see that, the market for cartridges only, being on a continual downturn. There will be some surprises in the market. There always is exceptions. There's always rules. Every collecting hobby, even coins. You know, this is my new Heritage auction purchase. This is an 1880 Carson City Morgan Silver Dollar. This is MS 65 Plus CAC certified. This is graded by PCGS. This coin's worth about $1,500 to $1,600. I got into a bidding war on this, I won't lie, and I paid a little bit over $1,500 for it. I still think, though, in the end, I got a good deal on it, because the 1880s Carson City Morgan Silver Dollars are harder to find when you get into the gem mint grades, meaning 65, 66, 67 plus. Okay, I don't even think there are any. There may be a couple that are graded 67 or higher. I don't think there's too many, though. And Carson City Morgan Silver Dollars are coveted. So getting these in high grade is a great buy if you get them at the right price. Again, at the right price. Another video on that. That said, guys, I just wanted to give you my thoughts on what's happening in the modern and even the vintage realm of video games at present time. I will continue to do more in-depth videos on these as I create new topics. I do want to start focusing, though, as I said in the beginning of this video, on other topics on this channel as well, not just video games. There seems to be a lot of demand on the subject of video games, so going forward I will probably try to release at least 1 to 2 videos a week on that topic if possible, with a minimum of at least 1. That way the core set of people who subscribe to my channel who are really interested in learning about the vintage or modern era marketplace for video games will at least have continuous content coming out. That said, I am also going to be releasing, guys, and I waited till the end of the video to state this, is I do have a radio appearance coming up. If you guys are interested in learning more about me or my articles for Antiques and Auction News, I am going to be on a radio show this Friday, September 6th. I will do a channel update video and put more details as to where you can listen to me. If you can listen to me live, or if you cannot and you need a recorded version, where you can get that information as well. Because the topics I'm going to be talking about with the person that's interviewing me is going to be Magic the Gathering cards and coins. So they're two very interesting markets that I'm going to be discussing that you guys can get some insight into if you are interested in that. Again, I will do a channel update video on this particular topic, so there'll be more details to come. Thank you for watching, and again, I'm sorry if this video is too long. We're at 29 minutes almost. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.